Hello and welcome. My name is Stu Pringle and I'm your host for today's session. This is the fifth episode of Transitions Pieces series brought to you by Apollo. If you're not familiar with Apollo, they are a leading engineering and advisory consultancy working across decarbonisation, marine energies, oil and gas, technical placements, and digital solutions. Established in 2010 and now with major office hubs all around the UK. So, today's discussion, you can see on screen that today the topic is how does the UK become a SAF powerhouse? Now, SAF is an important and at times a very emotive topic. So I'm looking forward to getting into this one. The good news is that the team in Apollo have assembled a panel of experts to share their views. You can see the team on screen now, and in just a moment, we'll do some introductions and then we'll get into the debate, good and proper. For our viewers, the plan for today is a total running time of just under an hour. We will split it into three parts. We'll have some initial thoughts from Callum Westland from Apollo. We'll then get into the panel discussion. And at the end, we're going to take some questions from you lovely people. For everyone who is watching, you will be doing so most likely through LinkedIn. The way that you can send in comments and questions is by commenting right under the video as if you were commenting on a LinkedIn post. As you write your comments, they will come through to the team here and we'll be able to pick them up and discuss them. So we've got a big audience today. We had way over 100 people registered. So don't be shy, say hello and get involved in the debate as it rolls on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our panel and then we're going to dive into the discussion. So joining me today is Callum Westland from Apollo. Callum is a senior consultant in the energy sector and he leads the Apollo advisory team. Specializing in decarbonisation and sustainability, he has a proven track record of guiding energy companies in optimizing operations, enhancing efficiency, and transitioning to cleaner energy solutions. He's got extensive experience across industry and he's worked with a diverse portfolio of clients, delivering tailored solutions that address both business goals and environmental challenges. Callum is also a regular on the Transition series episodes, so if you've been before, you'll be very familiar with Callum, so welcome back. Alongside Callum, I have Tom Andrews from Willis Sustainable Fuels. Tom is VP Projects at Willis Finance Corporation, where he leads the delivery of the sustainable fuels projects. He's got nearly 2 decades of global experience in the energy sector. He's recognized for his expertise in SAF, clean tech innovation, carbon removal, and large-scale project management. He's also a chartered mechanical engineer and a seasoned techno-commercial leader. He's got deep technical knowledge, strategic vision, which makes him a trusted advisor and collaborator across the industry. And we're very lucky to have him come along today. I'm also joined by Pete Fear from Hynamics, who is origination and partnerships. He has also got 2 decades experience in the sector. He's worked with industrial and commercial customers to identify and develop green and low carbon hydrogen projects. More recently, he's been focusing on industry and e-fuels, and he leads the activation of regional ecosystems to provide the right conditions and partnerships required to support the emergence of new large-scale decarb projects. Welcome, Pete. And also with us today is James Cox from Bristol Airport. James is the public affairs lead for the airport, which serves over 10 million passengers a year and links to over 120 destinations. He's a leader in sustainability, and the airport is well known for being committed to achieving net zero operations for 2030, and he is supporting innovative ways to cut scope 3 emissions. Now then, we've been round, except for Tom. I haven't introduced you, Tom. Have you been round everyone? I feel like I've missed someone. Good. No, we're through the introductions. Good. I just had a panic there for a moment, team. At least it shows it's live. Okay, so we've done the introductions. I'd now like to hand over to Callum, who'd like to say a few words, and then we will get into the discussion, good and proper. Callum, over to you.
Thanks, Stu. Before we get into the proper discussion, I would just like to say a wee bit about Apollo and what we've been doing in the SAF space over the past few years. So Apollo are an energy advisory and engineering consultancy, enabling clients to achieve their net zero ambitions across project lifecycle. We comprise of around 180 engineers, consultants, and subject matter experts who support the business across our four main pillars. So these are oil and gas, decarbonisation, marine energies, and technical placements business. We have delivered several SAF studies within our decarbonisation business unit, making SAF a core focus and a recurring theme in the conversations we have with our clients. Our decarbonisation team support a wide range of organisations across various sectors, delivering solutions in sustainability and climate policy, industrial decarbonisation, and the built environment. The topic of today's session resonates strongly with our clients, including SAF project developers, investors, and government stakeholders. The key themes that we'll explore during this panel include the current state of SAF production and deployment in the UK, policy and regulatory frameworks shaping the sector, and challenges impacting project delivery.
Brilliant. Thank you, Callum. Okay, I think we are ready to get into today's discussion. So without further ado, let's look at question number 1. So, panel, are you ready? Here we go. How would you assess the UK's current position in the global SAF landscape? What are our natural advantages and where are we falling behind compared to the US, EU, or other regions? And James, because you're right in the middle of my screen, I'm going to pick on you first. So let's get going.
Lovely. Okay. So you set this all out very nicely, but I suppose just from a sector point of view to kind of let you know where we are and where we've got to get to. So obviously the moment SAF mandate came in from the UK government this year, with 2% of total UK jet fuel got to be used, and we kind of work our way all the way through to 2040, where we have to get to a 22% target, which includes 3.5% of that being power to liquid SAF as well. So as airports, our position's a little bit weird. So the SAF mandate falls on fuel suppliers, not us. And generally, airports are not actually fuel suppliers, despite what kind of anyone outside of the sector might kind of think. The pressure of the policy sits on airlines rather than airports as well. So in this kind of weird middle position, if you like, in it. In terms of what we have to do, we're not expecting to have to do any kind of massive upgrades in terms of equipment. It's a drop in technology. We can refuel from tankers. It's all kind of fairly straightforward. But in terms of what we do, we store, we handle, we distribute the fuel. Although a lot of those kind of processes are done through a third party on our behalf. But we do coordinate with the producers, the blenders, and the suppliers. So we're a key part of the chain. It's just, a lot of the responsibilities don't fall on our shoulders. And I think for Bristol Airport, we're trying to kind of go above and beyond kind of what we have to do, what the expectations are, and go beyond that. So things like trying to get support for SAF facilities to be up and running in our region, and whether they come to us in the end in terms of what they produce doesn't really matter. It's about the overall benefit. We'd love it to come to Bristol Airport, but we'll see. And finally on this, we have kind of looked at this as being alternatives of what we do as airports, whether we become a fuel supplier ourselves, whether we invest in SAF plants, whether we just kind of rip up the kind of traditional model that we've worked with. At the moment, no, we're not ruling that out, but we just don't have the kind of skill set for that. Stu, to actually answer the question, which I've yet to do, so I'll do that bit now. In terms of where we are, supplies are really, really limited. We have a tiny amount of SAF on site at the moment to be used. It's really in very, very small figures, and that's just down to limited supplies. We're not seeing it come online quickly enough, or definitely not as quickly as I think lots of people expected. That is not unique to the UK. So looking kind of broad, the situation is very similar to the rest of Europe. We do, however, now have a framework. We've got the mandate and supporting policies, which are there or almost there. So we're now kind of expecting things to begin to really move. If they don't, then something's wrong with the policy, and we need to go back and revisit it.
James, brilliant. Thank you for that opener. Who'd also like to pick up on this one? Callum, is this one that you'd like to also share a few thoughts on?
Yeah, we'd just like to say that I think from a policy point of view, the UK's in quite an advanced place. We've got the SAF mandate, which came into force at the beginning of this year. So fuel suppliers have got to blend 2% of SAF within the fuel that they supply. So at the moment, that equates to around about 250,000 tonnes of SAF per year, going up to 10% in 2030, which is around about 1.3 million tonnes of SAF per year. From a domestic production point in the UK, taking what's mandated in 2030, what's produced in the UK, well, forecast to be produced in the UK in 2030 is around about 300,000 tonnes per year. So we'll have about a 1 million tonne shortfall compared to what is mandated. So we'll be quite heavily reliant on imports.
It's quite significant, isn't it? Which kind of leads me to the second part of the question, which no one's tackled yet. Does anyone feel like talking about maybe some of our advantages and where we're falling behind? Anyone fancy grabbing that one?
Comment on that. Comment on that briefly, Stu. So I think just echoing some of the points that James and Callum have mentioned there. That I think in summary, I think we're starting to really carve out quite a serious role in the SAF landscape. We've done a lot, I think, in terms of the UK's advantages. The policy piece is taking shape. There's the SAF mandate. I think we'd like to see more built on that, with the revenue certainty mechanism being firmed up. I think we should recognise that we have a really strong R&D ecosystem in the UK. So I think we've got a hugely strong academic and sort of industrial base for that innovation in SAF. Certainly in power to liquids and waste-based fuels. I think another point James noted, the infrastructure compatibility is there, right? So we've got the sort of this being drop-in ready, and people such as Bristol Airport are looking further forward to this. In terms of where we fall behind, the large scale SAF production, certainly compared to markets like the US, where they've got sort of vast agricultural feedstocks and lower cost of energy, that's where they're really pushing ahead. I think we've also, maybe we'll come onto in a bit, some of the constraints around feedstocks in the UK when we look at sort of heifer based SAF pathways. But it's what I think where we've got ground to make up is that sort of investment scale. So the policy bit is building, but we need to get that capital deployed into projects. I think there's lots in early stage origination, and Hynamics are working with a number of e-fuels developers in that space where hydrogen is a key feedstock to sort of combat some of that import threat. So I think we've got the groundwork for a really strong SAF ecosystem, but it's that scale of production, diversity in feedstocks from where we are today, and getting that private investment in there to stay competitive.
Thank you, Pete. Good points raised. Okay, we will definitely touch some of those areas around the heifer cap in the subsequent questions. So let's keep rolling. So the second question I would like to put to today's panel is this one here. What does realistic SAF production scaling look like for the UK? What infrastructure investments, facility developments, and supply chain build-outs are essential to achieving meaningful volumes? So we're kind of already starting to get into this one. So I'm going to put this back out to the floor. I wonder, Tom, I might bring you in to this one and give you, I'm going to put you up on stage, Tom. Tell me your thoughts on this, please.
Cool, thanks, Stu. I think, as you said, links very much to the discussion from the previous question. And really, when I think about SAF, it's about establishing that whole value chain. From a perspective of what we're trying to do, we very much see the challenge that turning things into deliverable projects, actually delivering SAF, is really key to underpinning the strength of the SAF mandate that already exists. And there are then, from an infrastructure perspective, I know we all come from different perspectives of different pathways of SAF, but in our case, we're using biomethane as our feedstock. So actually part of the scaling the infrastructure is, we can support the biomethane industry to grow, enabling them with further offtakes, further feedstocks, and that becomes a bit circular in terms of how do we take that waste and use it towards a high value product. So that fits one part of the infrastructure. Another part is the general greening of the electricity grid is key to this as well. We want to be producing a fuel that's genuinely sustainable, but if we want to scale up and we want to get producing, we need that backbone, such that individual projects are not trying to develop their own renewables or trying to develop their own feedstock supplies, because while we're trying to do SAF projects, which some of which are first of a kind, trying to de-link from that project on project risk is really key to being able to get things financed and get things built. So that wider build out of the value chain is really key. And we see that happening in the UK. Just a bit of background on where we are. So in the context of sort of process industries where maybe a lot of the audience come from, Willis Lease Finance Corporation doesn't necessarily mean a huge amount, but we're in the airline industry. We've been 45 years leasing engines to aircraft and airlines. So lots of people are aware that the aircraft flown by an airline often aren't owned by the airline, but nor are the engines. So we're a business that's got a big footprint in the UK. We see the value of doing business in the UK, and particularly up on Teesside where we're based, and we're investing in other infrastructure, and that infrastructure is starting to happen. There's lots of challenges to this, but there's lots of positive stories. Look at what we've managed to do in terms of getting carbon capture and storage up and running. We've got 2 Track 1 projects up and going. We've got more announcements on emitter projects reaching their sort of financial close today. So there is a track record in the UK that says we can build out that infrastructure, and all of it will support expanding things. The other point that I think is key is we haven't built a huge amount of things like this in the UK in recent years. So when you bring it to a facility level, how do we leverage existing brownfield sites? There's pros and cons of that, but back to trying to reduce what an individual project needs to do, and how do we really leverage the supply chain in the UK, and to really take the expertise, take the potential sort of cost optimization and supply optimization of using what's already there, because many of these SAF projects aren't fundamentally doing anything that novel. They're just putting them together in a different way. So it's taking all those bits, putting them together in the most efficient way, using the best knowledge that we've already got.
Thank you, Tom. That is a pretty comprehensive answer on that one. I'm just going to flick back to the question. Does anyone else have any points to pick up on what Tom's just walked us through there?
I'll come in on one quick point if I can, Stu.
Sure, go for it.
Noting that was a very, very comprehensive answer, Tom. I think I covered certainly all the points. I think the only bit I think we need to just add into that is probably around sort of workforce development. I think there's a clear need for for both SAF production and all the enabling steps, all the feedstock steps all the way through. There's a really high need for skilled engineers, chemists, logistics, and I think there's a big piece in there that we've got to sort of assess as well. But that's only a sort of footnote to the sort of very comprehensive view that Tom gave. We've got the policy ambition and the technical know-how. It's about building out sort of fast and investing to sort of bring all this together, really.
Yeah, I mean, we're going from small volumes to mass volume in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
If we're going to see this realized. I'm going to keep moving because I want to get through all the questions today. But just before I read out question 3, I just want to remind everyone in the audience, please send in your questions as well, and we'll pick them up in due course. Lee, we have seen yours. I promise we're not ignoring you. We will come to them later on in the session. So if anyone else would like to add any, please pop them through. Okay. Question 3. So this one is, how should the UK approach feedstock sourcing for SAF, from waste oils to agricultural residues to advanced pathways like power to liquids? What's the optimal mix for supply security and cost competitiveness? Now, there's a lot to unpack in this question. And Tom, I know that you and I were chatting before we went live on this one, so I think I might bring you on first for this question, if that's okay. Let's bring you up. Let me bring you up. Hang on. Here we go. Tom, over to you.
Sure. So yeah, try and keep this one quick. Stuart,
I
have you got the
do. I've got
slides,
your
Stu?
slides.
I
Your
can just
your
jump
team
to
have
that
sent me
one.
over this.
I like
So we got a little visual aid gang for today. Here
There
it
you go.
comes. Go for it.
So we certainly this helps my brain to understand what we're talking about quickly. So this is just a visual representation of the UK SAF mandate. The guys have already talked very eloquently around what that means volume wise. And we're obviously talking in this sort of forum around a number of different pathways to achieve it. I guess the unique parts here from a UK perspective are that although the profile of increasing SAF you can see in other regulated environments, what the UK has done is added under first generation, you can see the dotted line. So whereas most SAF at the moment is heifer, so the classic used cooking oil sort of analogy, what the UK SAF mandate says is that whilst there's already an inherent limitation to how much feedstock is available for that, there is actually a regulatory limit to how much we can use to achieve the UK SAF mandate, which inherently provokes that we need to produce second generation fuels. So second generation fuels then are cleaner, more sustainable fuels than first generation, but also made from waste. And exactly where our Willis project fits with our use of biomethane, which is essentially waste agricultural product that's been processed. And then third generation, as we already mentioned here, in terms of power to liquids, is then the increasing proportion at the top. So in terms of how should we approach it, I think there's lots of different views, lots of different ideas, lots of different ways of solving it. But I think the important thing from our perspective here is that the second generation is genuinely seen as important and fundamental, but all of these things need to be scaling to meet James's challenge at the start of how do we achieve those volumes.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Tom. Okay, team, what do we make of that? Who'd like to jump in on this one?
I'll say a wee bit on this one. I think if we want to have SAF production in the UK and reduce reliance on imports in the future, then we need to ensure that our own domestic production is cost competitive. So I'll speak about power to liquid SAF, but the primary cost driver for that is the price of power, and everyone on this the audience today is probably well aware that industrial power prices in the UK are amongst the highest globally. So for us to have a successful power to liquid SAF production supply in the UK, we need to do something to tackle that.
Thank you, Callum. So how are we going to tackle it?
Pete? Probably a good point for me to come in. I think so. Just I'll come to that piece, but yeah, I think as a general note on this, I think it's really clear we need a combination of sort of diversified, resilient, sort of forward-looking sort of solutions. We need a combination of that to achieve the goals that are set out. And I think absolutely we want not just to compete on price, but we need supply security. So I think that the commercials and the cost competitiveness is always going to be there, but the security is something we can't overlook. And I think very much agree. In terms of the slide that Tom, we've got sort of that the heifer pathway, which is giving us that immediate sort of short-term backbone. Absolutely, the sort of agricultural residues, waste, biomass definitely is that next expansion stage. When we get to sort of power to liquids, which is very much where we're interested, so we're taking sort of that green hydrogen and captured CO2, there's a lot of benefits with that approach in terms of near sort of zero life cycle emissions, scalable with the right energy source and mix, and sort of for the larger volumes, for sort of the long haul, it's going to have a role. So I think to address that point that Callum raised, I think one of the things that we're very focused on when we're looking at sort of green hydrogen development is how we bring that energy price down. Is that co-location with renewables? Is it sort of looking at where the production facilities we could enable investment in renewables, which are either stranded because they can't get secure or get grid, being sort of strategic about where those locations are going to be, and considering in itself a diverse mix. That puts us into a category again, which Tom alluded to earlier, of having interdependent FIDs, but it enables a much wider part of the economy. I think we've also got to look at alternative power sourcing moving forward, and sort of how we can play a role with hydrogen production in helping balance some areas of the grid. So where there's very high costs currently associated with balancing the grid, in curtailment in different areas, where does it make sense to utilize some of that excess power for hydrogen production? So it's a real combination of things that we have to bring in, and I think it's around these projects are high capital and energy intensive, but there's a really clear pathway. My closing point on that is we shouldn't just chase volume. We've got to be smart, sustainable, and future proofed in how we look at this.
Thank you very much, Pete. Okay, I feel like there's still a little bit more to run on this. Who else would like to jump in on this topic? We got any more?
I'll just maybe say a wee bit on feedstock sustainability.
Sure.
So Apollo have done a number of studies on looking at renewable fuels for different clients. We need to definitely ensure the biomass used for HEFA, or the bio CO2 or captured CO2 used for power to liquid SAF comes from sustainable sources. There's probably quite a lot of the audience that are aware that there's been investigations around renewable diesel and sourcing of used cooking oil for that, and imports into the UK. I think in the UK, I think we hold our industries to quite high standards, and we just need to make sure that if we are importing fuels, we are on a level playing field with them in terms of sustainability, or they're on the level playing field with us.
Very good. Thank you, Callum. Okay, if we're kind of feeling that we've had that one, should we move on? So our next question, just checking I've got this right. We should be onto this one here. SAF currently costs significantly more than conventional jet fuel. What are the most promising routes to reducing that figure, and what is but a distraction? And we've already discussed this a little bit with the co-location points just raised, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. James, I might bring you in. We haven't had you on for a little while, so could you give us your views on this one, please?
Yeah, happy to. So I suppose just a reminder for everyone of how price sensitive the sector is. Obviously, there's the SAF mandate, which is going to drive a lot of behaviour here, but you'll see pilots, if you pay close attention, have little iPads at the front of their cockpits, and they will have the fuel prices of each airport on those, and they will fill up depending on the sort of various fuel prices they can get on their route. So every kind of penny counts when it comes to airlines, particularly the low-cost airlines. They are very, very, very price sensitive. So I think this point of bringing down cost is just enormously important, bearing in mind the gap between the two is really, really quite significant at the moment. So for us, what we kind of and others are hoping for in the sector is to go big and simple. So to have some very large facilities come online to give us large amounts of SAF that the sector can use, not to kind of keep funding small, pitty little projects, which is one complaint I have of the government at the moment. Of innovation is great, but this is what we need. We need to get this stuff on mass volume coming through. What we'd really like to see is government-backed loans. So policies in place, but the ability to kind of fund these very, very large plants would be hugely useful. I think the only comparison I have for for this, bear in mind these facilities cost, upwards of sort of £1 billion mark, is when the landfill tax was brought in and the waste sector had to build these large incinerators, energy recovery facilities, as they prefer to call them. Again, big plants, hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, very, very big. And it requires a very, very large amount of private sector investment. To do that straight off the bat is extremely hard. So yeah, government backed loans to get us up and running, a few big plants. Let's get those numbers down and get the stuff in Bristol Airport and elsewhere.
Cool. An impassioned plea. I like it, James. Thank you very much. So, team, who else has some views on this? How are we going to get this scale? Tom, you look like you're warming up. I'm going to pop you up on stage.
I totally agree with James that the getting this stuff out and being used is the key. Our focus, as you said, is keep it simple. What is it that we can actually solve? What technologies are out there that we can use? How can we leverage sort of big company names? How can we leverage some of the supply chain that already exists? So, for example, we're working with big EPC and McDermott. We're working with well-known names in terms of technology licenses like Johnson Matthey. That means that we're more predictable. That means that we can move forwards. That means that we can find and solve the finance challenge. The big scale piece definitely has a lot of advantages to it as well. I think if you go back to one of our first questions around infrastructure, it's just trying to make sure that while we want big scale, we also need to get started, and that's where we've sort of optimized our project, is to say we're relatively a bit smaller scale, but we're very real. We're 14,000 tons a year of SAF, but we have a project with not much project on project risk. We have licensors that can deliver. We have engineering that's in place. We have cost estimates that are real. We have contracts and commercial terms that go with it. So there's that balance between scale is great, but we've got to be delivering some SAF, and as we start delivering them, we can scale on the back of that as well.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else like to jump in on this one? I'll try and get the screen to put you up on big screen.
I think
go for it, Pete.
I'll just jump in a wee bit. I think from our perspective, some of the financial modelling that we've done for the SAF projects that we've worked on, again, looking at how we reduce levelized cost, especially for power to liquid SAF, hydrogen makes up, the main pillar there. So using electrolyzer technology with greater efficiency, so requiring less power. So technology like solid oxide operates at higher temperatures compared to conventional PEM and alkaline systems. So co-locating that hydrogen production plant with industry, with thermal power generation like nuclear, for example, there's a lot of synergies there that can be used to help drive down those production costs.
Thank you, Callum.
Just come in with a couple more points on that.
Little technical gremlin there, but I think we're back. Yeah, go for it, Pete.
Yeah, so I think maybe I could summarise a couple of those bits, and to your point, Callum, yes, naturally always looking at the most efficient and optimal sort of the technology to use in electrolysis. I think that the energy price still remains one of the biggest challenges, which I said before is a continual, it's a challenge and an opportunity to look at how we can link that into wider electricity system benefits of using potentially, say, enablement of new renewables or curtailed power otherwise. So I think we can drive on that. I think other interesting point to note is there is a premium associated to SAF compared to jet fuel, but I think the thing that we sometimes overlook is that SAF mandate, it sort of also means that there's going to be a penalty on sort of fossil-based jet fuels, so they're going to get penalised for their emissions. So that we shouldn't just always think about bringing the price of SAF down. We should think about the cost of jet fuel is actually going to increase, right? So there's as with all things, there is a cost to going to net zero. So we need to look at how we minimise that as much as possible, but it supports that wider aim. So I think it's a mix of sort of policy enabled and sort of technology driven sort of solutions, and I think it needs to look at coordination outside of just the SAF market, to help, I think, to echo a couple of earlier points, sort of it's about de-risking investment, so that sort of like revenue certainty mechanism piece will be key in that, to allow us to scale and sort of push the frontier a bit, you know.
Good point raised. Can everyone hear me okay? I've just had a bit of a wobble with my bandwidth. Can you guys hear me?
You're fine.
Yep.
You're fine, Stu.
All okay? Good. Fine. Okay, fine. Thanks, Pete. Would anyone else like to wade in on this one, or shall we move on to the next question? What are we thinking? Shall we move on? Okay. So we've also got some more questions coming in from the audience. So in about next 5 to 10 minutes time, we will flip to them. So audience, get involved, pop your questions in, and we will pick up your thoughts shortly. So question number 6. Which SAF production technologies offer the most promise for UK conditions? HEFA, Fischer-Tropsch, alcohol to jet, power to liquids. Where should we focus R&D investments and demonstration projects? So, slightly different question this time around. Shall we head to Tom for this one, please?
Sure. I guess I'd probably come back to the initial the slide we showed in terms of the different pathways. I think there's space for each of those pathways, but it's about how you might optimize for different value chains. We've chosen the Fischer-Tropsch route. There are reasons for that related to deliverability in terms of what we can leverage of industry learnings and existing technologies, and a big part, as much as what goes in the heart of the plant, is trying to achieve that point where, in James's vision, we've got lots of plants built. Okay, plants being built is great, but actually what we're all trying to achieve is a supply of SAF to the airport. So we need things that are going to operate stably, reliably. The first plants have got to they've got to have a good reputation, because the subsequent plants are going to be built on the back of what worked, what generated revenue, what actually made money, what really worked as a business. So I think there's room for each of those pathways. A lot of it is then about what's your source of the feedstock. As mentioned on the biomethane, for us, that gives us a very stable feedstock, which makes it easier to run certain things in the heart of the plant. And then I think there's also a timing element of what's available now, what's available potentially in a period of time, which comes back to the innovation point of how do we get out there delivering, make SAF really happen, show that we can deliver against the mandate, support decarbonising aviation while continuing to improve, but making sure we've made some real steps in the first place.
Excellent. Okay, so look, Tom set the scene there. Who else would like to put their views across on this one? I know this was quite a hotly debated one when we were all chatting last week. So who else? Pete, I think you've probably got a few things you want to say on this one, so I'm going to put you up.
Got a few viewpoints for sure. Yeah, I mean, I did say, without wanting to repeat, I think we're certainly not welded to any one pathway, and this combination approach is absolutely going to be key. I think it's addressing the scale piece, and I'll make a statement now, which
Go
might
on,
seem
do it.
sort of. No, I think we've talked about the target of that, from 10% to 22%, but we're talking about, will there be a demand beyond the target itself, right? And as we get towards 2040, if we're serious about sort of long-term net zero, what could, and if we talk about we covered in the last question around if we can improve the price competitiveness, if we can make it more attractive commercially, I think we all want to live in the belief that everybody has a desire to be more sustainable in everything they're doing, not just meet obligations or mandates. So I think if we want to talk about true scale, like beyond the sort of 22% marks, how are we going to get there? And I think for the large scale, the sort of the power to liquids route is sort of can push.
Oh, I lost you all there for a second. Is everyone back? That was
I'm
fun,
here.
wasn't it? Oh, it was no reflection on your on what you were saying. It's had a little technical gremlin there. Pete, back to you.
No, that's okay. I'm not sure where you lost me, but I was just to say I'm hope consider me too wildly optimistic that we've got sort of ambition and to go at a significantly large scale. We see sort of power to liquids route sort of following that. So I think it's we know we've got to phase out the reliance on heifer, scaling up in tandem of sort of Fisher Trop's alcohol to jet and going big on power to liquids for that longer term view is where we see it, and they're large scale projects to develop. James noted the sort of scale of capital investment required, lots of interdependencies to enable, but can do that scale piece. So I think that's why we're very focused right now on that development pathway and being in early, so that we can hopefully help.
Brilliant. Pete, thank you for being an absolute pro and dealing with the technical glitches that we had there. Would anyone else like to comment on that one?
Just very, very, very briefly. Obviously, from an airport point of view, we don't really give a toss. As long as it comes to us and it's genuinely sustainable fuel, then yeah, it's good. Without going wildly off topic, the power to liquids is important for us, particularly with its role in hydrogen. We're going to have to be multi-fuel in the future, including hydrogen aviation. So power to liquids, hydrogen being developed, does help us further down the line when hydrogen aviation comes online.
Okay. Thank you, James. I'm liking the passion that's coming through here. Okay, gang. I'm just watching the clock. We've got 2 more questions, and I want to throw it out to the audience. So this question here is about the policy frameworks. What policy mechanism, mandates, incentives, carbon pricing will be the most effective in driving UK SAF adoption? How should government support differ across the development, demonstration, and commercial deployment phases? I am sure that this group has got some quite strong views about that. Who would like to start on this one? And Pete, is this one for you, perhaps?
I'm happy to come in. Hopefully it wasn't my connection that dropped out before, but
I think I'm guilty on that one, so it's okay, my gremlin. Well, but we should be okay.
I'll stick through. So maybe I'll make a start on this. So I think we're at a really key point in the UK's journey on SAF. So we've got to have a sort of policy toolkit which sort of sits alongside that. So I think I started straying into the 2 questions ago, but to achieve that de-risking of investment, guaranteed demand, and to actually reward the emissions reductions. So we've got to, I think look at this in sort of 3 stages. So I think it's around, there's a lot there already in terms of development and R&D. There's Advanced Fuels Fund has done put a lot of money towards early stage bits, and we're hopeful that they all emerge into scalable projects. So certainly a number of those through different pathways. I think this combination of public and private partnerships, to echo one of James's points earlier, what could the sort of collaborations, both I think sort of fiscally and also sort of technologically or knowledge sharing take place. that first bit is high risk, low reward, but there's stuff happening there. Demonstration phase probably plays more to the point around loans or guarantees, or sort of also additional support in regulatory approvals. I think streamlining of permitting, planning, and things that support the feedstocks. So is it around subsidization of feedstock collection or processing when you think about input costs? So that's going to get us to reliability and affordability. But I think the big stuff where we're looking at is very much around the commercial sort of deployment phase when we get to that, the longer term vision of big scale and full market integration. So we have the mandate, I think, which is really clear. That creates the market. But I think the revenue certainty mechanism, so something like a contract for difference in renewables, would it just empowers us to go out and have a stronger mandate with the investment community. The carbon pricing and emissions trading, so I think it's would help the UK ETS, and so if we can align that with the SAF life cycle emissions, it makes fossil jet fuel a lot less attractive. And then to one of the things that comes longer term is tradable SAF certificates, so that there can be a level of reward and potentially a secondary market on SAF credits. But that's got, we've ultimately that is to say grants and market mechanism, sort of short-term grants get stuff enabled, but we've got to have that longer-term view. So we're on the right pathway, but it's that next
Brilliant,
step.
Pete. Thank you. And you've raised a lot of really interesting ideas and innovations there. Before we jump to the last question, is anyone else would like to comment on what Pete has just said just now?
I'll probably reiterate a couple of Pete's points. I mean, totally a SAF mandate, great. We've got a SAF mandate that incentivizes reduced carbon intensity. There's always a bit of a quandary in this industry. Airlines think in litres of fuel, but we're trying to think in tons of CO2. And those two things come together in our SAF mandate, which it doesn't happen in other parts of the world. So that should incentivize us to be doing the right things. The revenue certainty mechanism is key, and we've seen that work in other sort of new businesses in the UK. I think probably similar to the others here, to reach this point of really delivering volumes and delivering scale, we're really keen to see that come forwards. But equally, as a project, our intent is to move before that. We want to see that we won't be penalised for such, but we want our ethos is to be an early mover, and get out there delivering SAF. So push for the revenue certainty mechanism, but also to make sure it doesn't penalise early movers who are trying to commit to deliver those volumes. I just said the Advanced Fuels Fund, we've been recipients of that twice now, and I think it's, on one hand, it's good from a monetary perspective, but equally we have Willis have a big company behind us, but it's also it sort of gives some indication as to how does the government judge projects, because there clearly will be a big process of that, as we've seen in CCS and other sectors of selecting the projects that are going to be supported to move forwards. So lots of positives, but we need to move a bit faster if we want to go and hit that curve that we had up earlier.
Lovely. Tom, clear points, well made. Thank you very much. 2 votes for revenue certainty amongst the panel on this one. Callum, do you have any final thoughts before I jump to the next question?
I would just echo the points that Tom and Pete made, that we're good at early stage funding in the UK. The 198 million, I think it is, that's been invested through the Advanced Fuels Fund has done a great job at getting a lot of these kind of first of a kind projects through pre-feed and feed, but we just need to look at that big hurdle of getting over FID. A lot of the big projects, looking at Europe, around Port of Rotterdam, where Shell and BP have recently delayed plans for big biofuels production facilities there. So it highlights the challenges that this emerging sector faces. they're very capital intensive. It's kind of first of a kind technology, and the returns on investment aren't what these where traditional petroleum companies are expected to receive from their investments.
Thank you. Good stuff. Okay. Let's just quickly do a quick fire on this last question, and then I want to dive into the audience, particularly for Lee, because he's been asking questions all the way through, and I feel like we need to give him his dues and pick some of them up. So, how can airlines, fuel producers, airports, and the government work together more effectively? What successful collaboration models exist, and what new partnerships are needed? A quick fire around the team. Collaboration, partnership, working effectively. What would you like to see happen? Who shall I come to first? James, I might drop this one to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I've probably got one helpful answer to this, but I think it's all a bit TBC at the moment. So for this to work, airlines got to commit to demand, fuel suppliers have got to scale supply. We need to, as airports, enable logistics, and the government needs to de-risk the system. A lot of this is going to be put in place. The revenue certainty mechanism is really, really important, as Tom was kind of talking about just now. But that's yet to really kind of get into place, yet to be, details still to be finalised. So it's kind of a bit too early to judge, I think. I think we know the model that needs to exist and what needs to happen. I think next year is going to be so key to see if this plays out and whether it happens organically, or whether we need to kind of go back and look at policy again, which I'm kind of suspecting we might do. But yeah, it's an unhelpful answer, Stu. But I don't know. Today we'll find out next year, I think is my answer.
It's the honest answer, so I like it. It's all good. Any more, and then we'll jump over to the audience questions.
I maybe don't disagree with James, but just to link maybe back to Callum's last point on, if these projects are going to happen, then we're at the point now as a project of going out to the supply chain saying, okay, we think we know what this costs. What does it really, what does it cost? What can you offer us? How can you help us put together a project that is able to raise finance by giving us guarantees, by giving us warranties? Lots of the supply chain are supplying to petrochemicals projects, LNG projects. If we want this to happen, then I think all of those elements of the value chain, as you had up on the slide, Stu, everyone's got to take a little bit of a step forwards. As Willis Lease Finance, we've done that. We're an engine lessor, but we see the value of this. We see sustainability being aviation's license to operate in the long term. So we're sort of putting our money where our mouth is, but everyone else is going to have to put half a step forwards to get the first projects up and going, and then we can scale. So I think that's how I'd interpret collaboration in this context.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, I think that brings us to a good point where we should jump across to some of the questions that have been coming in. And don't be shy if you're in the audience right now, pop yours in now. We've got a few that have come through. Callum, let's have a little look here. Are there any of these that you think that we should pick up between the end? Let's have a little look at what we've got here. We've got a few that have come through.
I think we'll maybe go with the first one Lee posted and then link that into the second one. So it's maybe a good fit for Pete.
Sure.
Is the problem there isn't enough hydrogen? And then on the back of that, I know from the work we've done, it's a very difficult question to answer, but what do you believe cost competitive price for green hydrogen to make this workable? I think it's the second one's quite a difficult one for us to answer here, given the revenue support mechanism hasn't been fully announced, but I think we can have a stab at it.
Pete, you want us to have a stab at it? Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hydrogen, right? So it's got to be in my wheelhouse to cover that one. So it's not necessarily there isn't enough hydrogen. I think the hydrogen will be available where there's, and just to probably build on that last point that James and Tom closed on, right? If we get the collaboration right, if we get that ecosystem right, so we can say yes, there's enough certainty and demand around, and very much to your point, Tom, I fully agree. I can produce a product for this price. Is that attractive to that whole value chain to ultimately to get back to that pilot in a cockpit with his iPad and a price list that says, yeah, I can get SAF at Bristol Airport and it's going to be at this price. If we can build that whole piece up, then we've got the ability and certainty to make investments. The hydrogen production, and then the derivative e-fuels being turned into a SAF will materialize. I think, is there enough hydrogen today? Absolutely there's not. Will there need to be to meet those 2040 objectives? Absolutely there will be, as part of the as part of the solution. So I think that it's not lost on us that the cost of producing hydrogen it is relatively expensive, driven by those energy cost peaks. So I think it came into the second part of that question. If I scroll through, what's a competitive price for green hydrogen to make it workable? I mean, ultimately it's what somebody's willing to pay for it, right? So I think we've got to understand what the market expects and how we get there, and that's going to be, again, people taking that step forward that Tom mentioned. I think it's also around investors having confidence that there's a long-term secure demand for a product. We've got to, it is one piece of the puzzle, and the different technology pathways have different economics associated to it. They have different levels of efficiency, and then you've got to think about, but the cost of green hydrogen produced very close to the SAF production facility price, located next to a blending facility with access to an airport, is clearly going to be a lot cheaper than something that's coming, being trucked or pipelined or even shipped long distances. So there are so many elements that go into the core that you're right, Callum, is a long answer to a short question. But it's what we're all exploring and actively, finding our way with, and having to make projects fit around that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pete. Okay, Callum, should we pick up one more before we move to wrap? I'm conscious we are rapidly running out of time. Is there anything else in the chat that you would like us to have a little look at today?
This one might go to Tom but linking to airlines and long-term offtake agreements. So is it essential that airlines enter into long-term SAF agreements, or can projects advance based on short-term agreements? So maybe from a Willis perspective, how is that kind of working? Is it sole agreement with one or two airlines, or is it just a case of that you'll produce the product and manage to find an off-taker for it?
So I think the supposition in the question of is it essential, essentially yes. These projects are, even the smaller scale ones, are in the hundreds of millions, and even if an individual company wanted to go and build a project sort of off of its own balance sheet, then showing that a project can raise some element of debt in some form is a real enabler for the scale up of the next phase. Back to the points earlier from James, we don't want to produce a few one-off projects. We need to build an ecosystem that builds a lot. So we believe that we need to see that the projects can raise debt in some form, and raising debt in some form requires a long-term offtake agreement. I think also the second part is that we need to see the airlines committing to the overall picture of SAF, which is then what underpins the SAF mandate and the validity of what we're all trying to achieve. So that customer drive has to be there to get people to invest in the projects. And I think what we've seen around the world where projects have happened, they can show that attribute in some form.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, look, 2:00 is very rapidly approaching. Are there any more thoughts on this one, or shall I move to rounding up the discussion? Has anyone got a real burning one? We feel we've drawn to a close. Okay. Right then, team, thank you so much for today's session. Clearly, it's a big topic. We've run massively over time, so for everyone in the audience, I hope we've not eaten too much into your lunch break. I would like to thank each of our panelists, Callum, Tom, Pete and James, for their efforts today. Maybe we should do a part 2. Feels like we've only just got going on this one. There's a lot more to be said. So I'll need to chat with Callum about that. But certainly it's felt like a very enjoyable and useful discussion. I think it's a good time to say thank you to Apollo for backing this venture, our Transition Pieces series. Without them, none of this would be possible. I wouldn't be able to bring this debate to put a spotlight on it like we have today. If you'd like to contact the team at Apollo and learn a little bit more about what they do, you can see the email address there. I'm also quite sure Callum won't mind me saying that he is active on LinkedIn and he is easy to find over there as well. So look, also audience, thank you to you for coming along and getting involved, sending in your questions. I hope we did it justice. I think it's time to say thank you, and we will be running a further transition piece sometime in the next few months. So keep an eye on Apollo's LinkedIn page and hope you can join us for next time. But for now, to the panel, to the audience, to everyone, I want to say thank you and have a very good day. Thank you, team.